happy International Women's Day to all of us, the ladies and the men around the table, and thank you very much for having me today. I wanted to actually zoom in a little bit, indeed, on the enabling environment, and because innovation and digital technologies are obviously critical to advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, the green economy transformation, and fighting climate change. But women, as we heard all afternoon, are grossly underrepresented in these areas, and the figures, in fact, speak for themselves, as we've also heard this afternoon. I wanted to give you one more interesting data point on that, and that is that even though women are active end users of technology and tech services, they actually only take up 10% of the leadership positions in organizations that shape, for example, the standards and norms of metaverse. Now, this disparity results in biases, which then in turn reinforce disparity as a kind of vicious cycle. And so to give you two examples how that vicious cycle plays out, a study released in January 2023 found that there is a visible lack of investor trust in women-led tech startups. Only 17% of venture capital goes to women-led startups. Another example is that example on the AI biases and perpetuating gender stereotypes. And for example, AI-powered recruitment programs tend to give higher ratings to male candidates because the algorithm that feds them is fed by a male-dominated employment pattern. So the consequences of this are obviously significant. If women are left out of developing the frontier technologies that will shape our future and our world, it will not only lead to overall economic losses to our economies, but it also runs the risk of women being left further behind in the employment markets of the future and how the future is shaped. So even women's gender snapshot, to give you a data point on overall economic losses, UN Women's Gender Snapshot report found that excluding women from the digital economy has caused economic losses of $1 trillion in low and middle income countries in the past decade. And that loss is expected to grow to 1.5 trillion till 2025. And I think it's also very clear that the development quantum leaps and the innovation that is needed to get the world back on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals won't be possible if we only have half the talents and the brain potential, half of the world's brain potential. So we know the remedies, how to address it. And let me just sort of reiterate very briefly a few points that were already mentioned. First, we need to indeed nurture interest in STEM at an early age. We know that girls actually are interested in STEM by the age of 11, but they lose interest by the age of 15. So schools need to not only provide equal access to digital skills trainings, they need to also actively seek out female students for STEM programs to foster their interest. Secondly, I think we really need to look at the attitudes and change the attitudes and create role models. public advocacy efforts are critical to dispel the incorrect notion that girls are less good in STEM, including in the minds of girls themselves. And so profiling inspiring examples, I think, can be a powerful tool. Tsinghua University, for the first time in its history, has at the head of its department for computer science 2 female scientists. Certainly, we also need to look at the employers. And gender considerations need to be incorporated into the hiring and the employment practices in tech and STEM sectors. And that includes gender-sensitive job advertisements, but it also includes gender balance selection panels. Now, to retain women in the career tracks and address what my colleague Shahbaz Khan called the leaky pipeline, we need to nurture the careers along and provide trainings and networking opportunities and mentorship programs. And also, we need more flexible working arrangement to address the needs of working mothers, including nursing rooms in companies. That all has to be part of the mix. I think tech companies should actually also be encouraged to publicly release the gender composition of their R&D teams, to incentivize them to bring more female participation in. And that, in fact, also makes business sense. Harvard Business Review found that companies that take female expertise to create products for the needs of female clients improve their likelihood of success by 144%. STEM research institutions is another field, and I think Professor Fang Xin spoke about that. China is doing a lot, including increasing the age limit to apply for research grants, so that of female researchers, so that maternity breaks can be accommodated. Fourthly and lastly, we need to promote policies that foster an enabling environment. So that means we need to put laws in place that end discrimination and inequality at the workplace. We need greater investments, public investments into childcare facilities, including nurseries and kindergartens, and increasing both maternity and paternity leave can actually help balance the burden of care and thereby reduce the pressure that women feel on having to choose between career and family. Let me close by just saying, highlighting a few things that UNDP is doing. We are working with UN Women and the UN system here in China to empower and engage more women in STEM and tech fields. One of the things that we've been doing is spotlighting female role models through an annual campaign that we call Her Story, and that is in its third year of rollout, and it shares the stories of women leaders in STEM to inspire girls to take that track. And we had actually last year 1,000 girls selected from rural areas interacting with these female scientists, which I think has been a very powerful experience for them. We are also organizing this year a STEM boot camp for teenage girls with funding support from government. And we're shortly releasing a policy brief that examines the factors that hinder women's participation in science and STEM and the digital economy, comparing policies implemented across the region and providing recommendations to address the structural barriers and the changes that are needed to achieve gender equality. Globally, UNDP is also working with UNICEF on a STEM for All initiative that is hosted out of our Istanbul center, and it's a hub that accelerates or platform rather, the representation of women and girls in STEM to meet the demands of the future of work in Asia and Central Asia. Let me stop here and thank you again for the opportunity.